long time. Sumit sir has been as a mentor, as a teacher, I will say, always guiding, always, and such a thorough. Because before my personal experience, sir, I think twice before speaking to you, because you're so thorough, so in detailing, comma full stop everything. That is really nice experience. Shikha is a young talent, and such a young age she has made her name for herself. Thank you, Shikha. And Puja ji will be joining. She's from Delhi and an IP and very renowned IP. And my all the friends, Nitin ji. And today we have decided to discuss the discussion papers issued by the IBBI on the liquidation process and how to become the insolvency professional entity. And when the veterans like Sumit sir, who was from, I think, very first day of the IBC till the date, he has an experience himself. And over to you, sir. What is your insights? And friends who have joined from across the country, Sumit Binani sir is the past chairman of the ICSI and very renowned professional in the eastern part of the country. And Shikha is a young company secretary under the Vinod Kothari and company. And Puja ji, insolvency professional from Delhi, she will be joining soon. I think over to you, Sumit sir, because this format is informal, friends. Please put your opinion, ask questions as much as possible. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Anil, the chairman of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India in the Eastern region. And Shikha, a very good speaker and a very good resource person when it comes to corporate laws and IBC.
Thank you, sir.
I really admire her capabilities. Of course, Puja also I have interacted. She would be joining. And all the fellow colleagues who have joined, thank you very much for this opportunity to the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, the Triple IP division. At the outset, we are going to informally discuss two discussion papers, which has been released by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India on 14th of June 2022. And with the intention that we would basically note down the comments from the people or participants who have joined in, including our comments, so that ICSI Triple IP would be in a position to forward all the comments to the regulator for consideration. With this being the objective, in fact, Shikha and myself had a brief chat over WhatsApp, and what we have decided that let us design a brief format of this entire session. So what I'll do is that I'll give you an overview of the discussion paper as to why this was necessary. And then I will ask Shikha to basically take us along the discussion paper on the liquidation process. And thereafter, Puja will take us through the IPE paper. And in between, wherever required, I'll provide my input. And all those inputs subsequently can also be, seconded by all the participants who are joining. And then together we compile all the suggestions and place it before the regulator. So this would be the approach that we will be taking. So coming straight to the liquidation process discussion paper, as you are all aware that this particular discussion paper is on streamlining the liquidation process. And see, all of you are aware that one of the major objective of the code is timeliness, whether it is the resolution process or the liquidation process. For efficiently carrying out the processes, we are also expected to complete the resolution process as well as the liquidation process in a time-bound manner. But we have seen that a lot of delays have been happening because of whatever reasons, and that has been clearly mentioned in the discussion paper. And also it is everywhere for all the professionals to observe that what is the major cause of the delay. But irrespective of that, the ultimate objective of the code is to revive or to liquidate if the revival does not yield into successful resolution plan. But yes, all those two process has to be in a timely manner, and that is the paramount objective of the code. And that is why you will find that even in the liquidation process, when the law was promulgated, initially the liquidation regulations provided for completion of the liquidation process within 2 years of the liquidation commencement date. Subsequently, the regulator thought that no, 2 years is too long a time. Let us reduce the timeline by 1 year, because after having so many other facets of the law which was in the initial phase having settled, I think the regulator thought that no, keeping in view the objective of the code, which also stresses on the timeliness of the process, let us reduce it to 1 year. But even after such reduction, we have seen that there have been inordinate delays in the liquidation process, which has actually compromised the objective of the code of maximizing the value of the assets, as the value of the assets also declines with the flux of time. And that is why the insolvency regulator has proposed certain amendments in the liquidation process regulation and the law, so that it can be carried out in the more efficient manner, and the objective of timeliness could also be achieved. This being the broad objective, I will now request Shikha to kindly take us through the proposal one by one, and wherever required, I will also chip in.
Sure,
Shikha.
sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Sure, sir. Thank you. Good evening, all the participants here. I'll just come straight to the point. I'll share my screen for the sake of reference only, and I'll take you proposal to proposal one by one. Am my screen is visible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So coming straight to the first proposal, it relates to streamlining of the constitution of SCC, which is Stakeholders Consultation Committee. We all know liquidator has the power to consult any of the stakeholders, though it doesn't envisage any kind of right on the stakeholder to give advice to the liquidator. But again, in order to establish certain controls, the proposal is twofold. Number one, there has to be some kind of an interim SCC, and the constitution of such interim SCC has to replicate the constitution of COC. So this interim SCC will remain in place until the final SCC is constituted within 60 days of the liquidation commencement date. So this is mostly a gap filler to my mind. Secondly, it provides for a revised composition of SCC. As on date, we have all the representatives of all the stakeholders, the numbers are given, and those stakeholders constitute the SCC. Now, the proposal says that henceforth the SCC will be comprised of only those stakeholders. They will have voting rights in the proportion of their respective liquidation values, as in I'll assign respective liquidation values to them under section 53, and accordingly I'll give them voting rights. So I invite views of all the members here, all the participants here. But one specific question which I have in mind is it feasible to have all the stakeholders in the SCC when I know beforehand that only a certain section, or say only the first priority creditors, would be entitled to distribution, looking at the liquidation value and the expected realization values? Over to the house. And of course, Sumit sir, in case he has anything to add.
See, the requirement of having an interim stakeholders committee is actually a welcome step, because when the application for liquidation is filed, or when there's no successful resolution plan received for revival of the company, and the timeline for CRP becomes over, the RP concerned has to file an application and a report before the adjudicating authority. Now, normally it has been seen that the passing of the liquidation order after such application may take at least 2 to 3 months on an average, and in many cases it has exceeded over a year also. So for this interim period, it has always been a question that then what happens to the corporate debtor, because corporate debtor continues to be function. If it is running, it continues to be running on an as-is where-is basis with the responsibility on the RP, even if he has not opted to act as the liquidator, to continue to act as the trustee for taking control and custody and managing the affairs of the corporate debtor till the liquidator is appointed. So during such time, there would be various decisions which he would be required to take, wherein he would also like to have the inputs of the committee of creditors. But the committee of creditors not being there, that is why the regulator has thought that, okay, let us put in a stakeholders committee, which would be none but the committee of creditors who were continuing when the CIP of the company was on, so that there is an oversight and accountability on the entire process during that intermediate limbo period, wherein we are all waiting for the liquidation order to be pronounced and the liquidator to be appointed. And subsequently, as Shikha mentioned, that once the claims are invited and 60 days period is over, wherein the liquidator collates all the claim and prepares the final claim list, and then he prepares the stakeholders committee. I think Shikha, here I think the question which you answered is in fact answered in the regulation, because in the concept paper, because the discussion paper now very clearly says the composition of the SCC, and I'm reading, will be changed with stakeholders having voting rights in proportion to the share of payments they will receive as per waterfall mechanism in section 53, if the liquidation value as per the latest valuation available is taken as the proceeds for sale.
Right.
In case any valuation, so which means that, as I understand from the discussion paper, is that suppose the liquidation value is available with the liquidator based on the old CRP report. Okay, so based on that liquidation value, he will calculate the payments, the share of payments which the stakeholders would receive, and basically those stakeholders would then constitute the revised SCC. So which in essentially means that if the liquidation value payable to say any financial creditor is nil, because that financial creditors is unsecured, or that particular operational creditors is coming down the liquidation table, then such creditors will not form part of the SCC. So I think that problem or that query has already been addressed in the discussion paper.
Yes,
This
sir.
is
So
as
the confusion arose because of these provisions, which I'm highlighting here. It says the representative of stakeholders not having voting share in the consultation committee may attend the meetings, but shall not have any right to vote. Further,
here what it means, Shikha, is that in the COC regime, there are related parties who do not vote, right? And also the suspended board of directors who are entitled to attend the meeting.
right, right.
So for them, I think the discussion paper takes into account that concept and allows those people to still continue to be part of the SCC without any voting rights. So that is what it essentially means.
So will it be, say, operationally convenient, or will it not be open to, further delays if we still allow participations but not the right to vote? Just a thought.
No, but see, the law is now clear that they will not have any right to vote. And see why this is required. A, to have oversight during the limbo period, and B, it is also essential that the initial decision of appointment of valuers and a few other expenditure with the liquidator is required to make. All those also, gets regulated, and there is also an involvement of SCC in that process. And subsequently, after 60 days, when the revised claim is being calculated, only those stakeholders who will be entitled to get some money would
Right.
form part of the stakeholders committee. And
Ideally,
also,
that should be the case, right?
and that is what it is. And also, to add to that, suppose if a secured creditors has opted for a realization of its asset,
Realization.
then they will also not form part of the stakeholders committee, because they have already opted for
Which is
realization of
very
asset.
much logical.
Therefore,
Right.
they do not have any role in the SCC, because they will not be entitled to any distribution out of
Right.
the.
They'll stand out of the queue, and hence there is no question of them being in the SCC.
Absolutely.
Right, sir.
So
I would invite.
to this extent, Nitinji, since you are representing ICSI, I think there is a drafting error in the regulations, because it says that any person who has any secured creditor who has who has not opted for relinquishment of assets will not form part of the committee of creditors.
Was not relinquished.
Who has actually relinquished shall not form part of the the SCC. So
No,
that's
sir.
what.
So the one who relinquishes the right will, of course, be a part of this because he would be entitled to distribution under Section 53.
Absolutely. But
Yes,
yes,
yes.
absolutely. But one who is not will not form part of it.
Right. One who
So I
is
think
realizing outside the liquidation
Right.
state will, of course, stand outside forever.
So yes, so there's no correction, Nitinji. Yes, she's right. Yeah.
Just that, sir, I would just request that this sub-regulation 3, the liquidator may facilitate the stakeholders of each class. So to nominate the representative, it is causing confusion to me, and I suppose this might cause confusion to others also. As in, instead of eligibility, I might need to, facilitate every class of stakeholders to nominate their representatives.
So what actually I was also confused, but then I thought that the logic could be that, say, suppose if there are 5 secured creditors, so 5 of them can have a single representative in the SCC, and the liquidator may facilitate that if they want, right? And if such thing happens, then the decision of those 5 members would be represented by that individual in the SCC. And how will that decision making happen? Suppose if there are 5 creditors who have nominated one single representative, so any particular agenda item which needs to be voted upon or decision has to be taken, so majority of those secured creditors will then decide that what to vote or what not to vote.
So this again isn't it becoming a 2-step process? As in, this time the liquidator straightforward goes to secured creditors, say the entire set of secured creditors takes their voting, and the work is done. Now, if we make it a 2-step process, wherein there is only a single person who will go back to the 5 secured creditors and take their consensus and decide on majority and then come back to me, aren't there possibilities of delay in this?
Absolutely, there is a possibility of delay, because then what would happen is that the liquidator will have to circulate the detailed agenda very well ahead in advance. Those agenda would then be discussed between those creditors. They will come up with the decision, and then the meeting has to be fixed.
And sir, experience says creditors' decisiveness is something very precious. Doesn't come handy. So that's the issue.
I think it's an optional thing. I think from the reading of the discussion paper and the language in the regulation, I think it is optional, because the word used is may. So I think the liquidator would be better off as far as saving time is concerned while inviting individual creditors, and rather not having a single representative.
Right, sir. So if anyone in the house has further views to add or subtract, they can please, or else we should quickly move to second proposal.
So ma'am, let's also conclude on what are the suggestions on the first proposal.
Okay, so broadly the consensus as of now is that the idea of an interim SCC is a welcome move. No concerns as on that. As to the second, the part B proposal, that the composition of SCC has to be those stakeholders who are eligible to have distribution under Section 53. We are aligned, but we think that in my personal view, there might be certain drafting changes required in the regulations which clarify this point, that yes, besides those stakeholders, no other stakeholders may be needed in the SCC. Although Sumit sir is saying that this is coming out quite clear from the regulations.
Clear. Yeah, if you read carefully, I think it is very clear. The only suggestion is that the provision which basically allows the liquidator to call for representation from similar class of stakeholders, that should be voluntary. That should not be mandatory. And though it has been worded as may, but a clarification or some additional lines which would basically further clarify this would be a welcome.
Sir, just wanted to say one thing. During my recent discussion with IBBI officers, so what they said is that when we come up with a discussion paper, we have a lot of reasoning behind it, right? So if you have a better reasoning, which is better than what we have proposed, okay, so you have to think like a think tank for us, so we can finalize on your suggestions. So, for example, if I am suggesting something, somebody else says this is not right, but I do not know what is right. So that cannot be the way. That's what has been told by IBPI.
Yeah.
That's also the Sumit sir has well explained that earlier there was a vacuum between the CRP to liquidation process. By this interim SEC, that vacuum has been filled up.
Yeah, so we are fine with the proposal as far as there's no
So
further
should I move
please.
to proposal 2?
Yes.
Yeah, so as of now, proposal 2, as of now, the regulations provide that in case the liquidator has consulted the stakeholders and he takes a decision which is contrary to the advice of the SEC, he should record the reasons and mention that in the next progress report. Now, this proposal goes a step ahead. It says that instead of stating those reasons in the next progress report, you need to forward the records of the said decision in a manner as prescribed by board to the adjudicating authority as well as the board, that too within 5 days of taking such decision. To my mind, this is perfectly okay. Sumit, off to Sumit sir.
Yes, absolutely. This is a welcome move.
Right.
More transparency.
So just to underline the objective here, it is that like in IP, rather the IFP and the RP acts on the guidance of the COC. So the liquidator should act on the guidance of, or the rather, the SEC.
Correct.
But this is very welcome. That's if there is a need of opinion, then the board and IBBI will be informed.
Right. So I'm moving to proposal 3 in case there aren't any views on this.
Yes,
proposal. Yeah. So proposal 3 deals with relinquishment of security interest by secured financial creditors. So presently the position is the secured creditor has to, while submitting his claim, write in the form whether he is relinquishing the security interest or would want to realize the security interest, and there are further provisions on that. This proposal seemingly is to provide more certainty to the liquidator while constituting the liquidation estate. It says that the secured creditor shall intimate his decision whether he would be realizing or relinquishing the security interest within 7 days of the liquidation commencement date or within the first meeting of SEC, whichever is earlier. So this SEC would be the same SEC as the COC was. This is the interim SEC as far as I can understand. And to my mind, this is also a welcome move as it provides a lot more certainty to liquidator while constituting the liquidation state, and is avoiding and is also seeking to avoid many disputes which come between liquidator and secured creditor. So to my mind, it's also a welcome move.
It advances the timeline and also puts the onus on the committee of creditors to basically think while the liquidation is being considered, so that immediately within 7 days or the first date of the meeting, they should be ready. So with the decision, otherwise, not taking the decision basically kills the timeline in the liquidation process, and that has been the experience. So this is indeed a welcome move.
Right, but just sir, one technical point, one procedural point here. The form D, which is submitted by secured creditors, there is an entry called whether the security interest is relinquished or realized. Maybe that entry might need some change, because the intimation would have gone way before.
Yeah, so while filing the claim, that additional information can still go, not an issue. Because see, many creditors, what they are doing is that initially they relinquish their security interest, or initially they realize their security interest, and then they subsequently, after 5-6 months, says that no, now we want to relinquish it. So that creates a problem. So it is always better to take the decision in advance, so that the process does not suffer. Because any such things happen, then again the voting share distribution, everything gets changed. And at this point of time, in the initial meeting, if they're forced to take a decision, because they are also aware that if they are going to realize their security interest, they will not be forming part of the SEC. So all those things would be playing in their mind. So they should do their homework well in advance and come back and make their submissions, so that the process does not suffer.
Right, sir.
And so the best part of it is that if within the period of 7 days they do not give any intimation of their objection to the relinquishment, so it will be deemed
Yes.
to be a relinquishment.
This is already there, for example, as far as the 30-day clause is there. So now they have just, advanced
Reduce
the
the timeline. Okay, so coming to proposal 4, so it deals with replacement of liquidator, as in say that the SCC by a majority vote of present and voting, which is important, may propose replacement of the liquidator and can file an application to adjudicating authority. Though I understand this power or this power to file an application for replacement was implicitly under section 60 because adjudicating authority will anyway allow such applications, but I was just wondering if it's possible to have certain kind of indicative criteria which is say material irregularity in conducting the process. If the regulations specifies this sort of the intensity of wrongdoing which the liquidator has done, it would act as guidance for the SCC as well and other stakeholders as well, and plus the adjudicating authority.
So Shikha, this has been debated a lot.
Right.
As far as any wrongdoing on part of any professional is concerned, the mechanism which is available is the complaint mechanism, and that should be availed of. And as far as replacement of liquidator is concerned, I think we are handling few cases wherein this replacement application always goes back and forth because different NCLT is adjudicating differently. Some say that okay, the stakeholders have got the power. Some say that no, the stakeholders do not have the authority to replace the liquidator. And when such thing happens, you'll see vested interest coming in, and they will file another application. And what actually happens is that it delays the entire process. So, and I have also seen that when a removal application or any such complaint application is being filed for a liquidator, the entire process goes for a toss also. Because if there are certain important applications which is also pending before the adjudicating on a simultaneous basis, the adjudicating authority says that no, first let us hear your removal application.
Right.
First, let us find out that whether there is any satisfactory plea or not. Then we will decide on the process part. So what happens is that while the adjudicating authority takes its sweet time on deciding whether the liquidator should be removed or there is some misconduct on his part, the process actually suffers because the main application where some decision on process has to be taken takes a backseat. So again, it basically kills the timeline. So I think let the SCC, because ultimately the earlier think tank was that if the CIRP has failed, which means the committee of creditors were not able to get a resolution plan. And because at that point of time, the professional was just the driving force. Now, and when that failed, the entire onus of selling the assets of the company was on the shoulder of the resolution professional, wherein the stakeholders only played an advisory role. But now with the experience, what we are seeing is that why not let there be more accountability? Because also as a professional, if I am handling CRP process and I am handling liquidation process, I am more stressed
in
handling
liquidations.
the process because I know that I am alone. My
Right.
every decision would be questioned by some or the other vested interest. So if a stakeholder is also with me, who is also overseeing the process, I get relieved. So
Right.
I think all those stakeholders who will be receiving the dividends out of the liquidation estate should be made party of the decision making process, wherein the RP leads the role. But then that comfort is always there. So let the stakeholders take a decision. If they feel that this RP is not performing, remove him. And if there is any complaints, go to the disciplinary mechanism. Why the process should suffer because of unnecessary intervening application being filed? So this is my view. I think this is a welcome step. This should be taken forward.
So my one observation, Sumit sir, I wanted your opinion on that. Becomes entire the IBC process, the professional, basically the RP is like a football who have too many bosses. I will be very frank and forthright here. Be the adjudicating authority, be the IIP, be the IBBI, and sometimes I see that the over jealousness, because our job is so that some or other person will be aggrieved. That has to be very, very clear, because Our job is not to satisfy everyone. Our job is to take decision as per the law. Sometimes the interpretations are varying. To best understanding, professional takes the decision. But I have seen that in practical life, for the honest professional decisions, vested parties have hounded the professions like anything. What do you think, how these kind of situations can be avoided for the benefit of the professionals?
See, very difficult to have a clear-cut answer. I think the regulator is aware every time there is a meeting or consultation meeting with the stakeholders, whether it is RP, whether it is insolvency professional, whether it is COC. I think the regulator and the frontline regulator, the IIIP, they are doing their bit. They are also aware of the kind of situation and problem which we face. We have also represented to the regulator. But at the end of the day, regulator's position is subservient to that of the adjudicating authority, right? So there also they have got a limited role. But the regulator and the frontline regulator both have been forthcoming and asking us to suggest ways and means. Of course, suggest ways and means, as Nitin just mentioned, does not mean that मेरे को ये problem हो रही है. वो ये भी बोलते हैं कि आप मुझे ये भी बताइए कि law में what modifications do you want? What are the provisions which should be tweaked? Right. So one suggestion is that, as I also mentioned it to the chairperson of IBBI very recently, that all the complaints against the RP should be handled at the regulator level only. It should not go to the adjudicating authority. Right. So that eliminates a lot of the vested interest, because they would come up with frivolous and false complaint, and IBBI has got time and wherewithal to look into it, as compared to the adjudicating authority, because you only get 4 to 5 minutes to represent your entire matter, and whoever shouts much or whoever is more presentable is able to win the matter. So it is always better for the IBBI or the frontline regulator to go through the papers and actually take cognizance of the steps taken by the RP. So, and they also understand that it is humanly not possible for a single professional to handle each and everything, and mistakes would be obvious. But at the same time, the intent should be honest, and he should be upfront and following the process of the law. So I have also got a lot of relief in many such matters, wherein I presented and flagged off in various of my matters before the regulator. So I think the law will evolve, and we have to live with that. There would be vested interest. Anil,
yes, sir, that's supplementing on further on this point, because I have seen that sometimes the COC or creditor did not take any actions. He has done his job as per his professional obligations. Later on, he is removed without being paid. Now the RP is before the adjudicating pillar to post for recovering his professional fees. There is one suggestion, sir. Nitinji, you can also be that. That's my viewpoint, sir. When the first COC meeting, I think there is tentative CRP cost, including the professional fees of the RP, should be deposited in escrow account, and all the COC members has to pay accordingly. If they pay, then they will participate. Otherwise, they will not participate. And the RP should be entitled to withdraw as per the milestone basis from that escrow account. Because if he does something wrong, then adjudicating authority is there. There is some mechanism where the RP should be made independent of the undue pressure of the COC. Because sometimes COC they want it their own way, and that is sometimes against the spirit of the law. In that situations, the law should protect the RP if there is an undue pressure of the COC in that situations. That's my view.
No, see, many adjudicating authority are passing an order at the time of admission, and they want the applicant to deposit the fees of the RP as well as the expenses which are required to be incurred by him during the IRP process upfront. So we have seen various orders being passed by different adjudicating authorities. So I think adjudicating authority are cognizant of the fact, and some part of it is being taken care of. But yes, Nitin can note down and pass on the suggestions further. Next.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So shall I move to the next proposal?
Yes.
So it deals with the fee of liquidator, and as looking at the language of this proposal, it seems that it's talking about the interim fee of the insolvency professional at the time during the interim period between the date of filing application, liquidation application, and the passing of liquidation order by AA. Further, it also says that in this way, the SEC would be able to review the fee structures of the liquidator. But when we see the regulations, it looks like a little comprehensive, as I would just. Yes. So, so the regulations state the liquidator shall constitute a consultation committee within 60 days to advise in matters relating to review of fees of the liquidator. So I feel that there is a disconnect between the regulations and what the proposal paper is saying. As in, it looks like at all times the SEC would be entitled to review the fees of the liquidator. Even if the same is slab based and the liquidator is withdrawing the fee in accordance with the well settled milestones. So it looks like it's very much pervasive. But again, I would like to know the views of my seniors.
See, the discussion paper talks about fixation and review of the fees of the liquidator in the initial phase of the liquidation process.
Right.
So I'm also actually slightly confused as to, up till what time this review would be
happen. Appropriately, it should be only at the initial stage as to what kind of a structure should the liquidator's fee follow, and not, I'm not getting into the review of what is the liquidator withdrawing. I should only know on what basis the liquidator should be entitled to have his fee, as in on the basis of the fee fixed by COC or on the basis of the slab. To that extent, if the review is happening, it's still fine. But if we are going to the granular level, I think it might not be needed.
See, the table cannot be reviewed because
Exactly.
table is described in the regulation, and that is not the intent because they have not linked it to the table. But yes, if they have fixed a fee, the committee of creditors have fixed a fee while appointing the liquidator when the liquidation order was yet to be passed, they have the right to review it. And I think the review should always be upwards. Because when we start the process, we are not aware of the complexities and difficulties which a professional may face. For example, it may run into a lot of litigation, which would further kill the time.
Asset attachments, etc., never ending.
Right. So here, I think this initial phase should be, defined, in my opinion, because it cannot just happen that every 6 months the SEC says that no, I will revise your fees.
Right, exactly. Revise or review, as in whether you are abiding by the slabs, whether you are so at what point of time the review should happen and what is the extent of review. These 2 points should come out very clearly in the regulations.
So,
so there's a catch here. The reasoning put out by the discussion paper is that where there's a long gap between the application seeking liquidation and the liquidation order passed by the AA. So in those cases, there may be a scope for review of the liquidator's fee.
No, considerable time passes. That is the application filed for liquidation. No, right, where it is.
At present, considerable time passes between the application filed for seeking liquidation and the liquidation order by AA. There's the fees of the liquidator fixed by CS.
Okay.
But so this is not coming out very clearly from the regulation.
Regulation, yeah. The liquidator said consumable 60 days. Right. So this is continuous, no?
This is getting continuous. Plus, how can SEC advise the liquidator on matters relating to review of fees? I think there has to be some kind of another sub-regulation under Regulation 4, which allows the SEC to review the fee during that interim period. Correct. Only. So we can provide the draft after this session.
Fine.
If Nitin sir is okay with.
Please, ma'am. Yes, please.
Sure. So, Sumit sir, shall I proceed ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yes. Okay. So the next one is compromise or arrangement, which in itself is a very debatable issue. So the proposal paper actually talks about how schemes have not been very useful in the context of IBC, and then it says, however, it goes on to say that it goes on to reduce the timelines for the scheme. It says that the liquidator shall complete this process within 30 days of the liquidation commencement date. So I have two questions to think about here. Number one, we are merely squeezing the timelines for the liquidator. Will it really help us? Number two, is 30 days a sufficient time period for a scheme? And number three, a very broad-based thought or question indeed is whether at all a scheme is a feasible idea in the context of liquidation process under IBC, given the fact that the corporate debtor has already been through CIRP, which is nothing but some sort of a scheme of resolution, right? And a scheme also intends to do that. Plus, there is an option of going concern sales before the liquidator. So these are the broadly three questions which I have in mind and would like to know the views of members.
Shikha, the third view, I think the Supreme Court is now very clear that yes, scheme of compromise should have to be considered, and a revival opportunity should be given to the corporate debtor. And so I think let us not get into that, because the apex court has already ruled in various decisions that revival is the key and that is paramount even during the liquidation process. And there have been various cases which has also been dealt very extensively by the apex court. So I think that remains. But yes, as far as reducing of timelines, what regulation essentially says is that instead of a 90-day window, I'm reducing it to 30-day window, assuming the fact that when we file the application for liquidation and when the order comes, there is a time period which is actually wasted. So if the COC during the resolution process do not see any resolution happening of the corporate debtor, then they take this decision of liquidation, right? So whenever such instance happens, the COC and the RP are seized of the fact that this company is going to go into liquidation, right? For which a process needs to be followed. So what is the process? The COC meets, decides to appoint a liquidator, fixes his fees, and asks him to file an application or submit his report, right? And when the liquidator then goes in and files an application, gets it listed, hearing takes place, there are objections, etc. So it consumes on an average 2 to 3 months, right? So at that point of time, when the decision of liquidation has been taken, the section 230 process should be, activated, and it puts on the onus on the COC and the RP to evaluate the section 230 revival process during that interim period. So I think we cannot further reduce this timeline, because 2 to 3 months is the timeline which is quite reasonable, because that is a minimum which any process would require. So that is why reducing it from 90 days to 30 days, is a welcome step, number one, in my opinion. And number two, uh, uh, what is missing in the regulation is that the regulation does not talk about the steps to be taken,
Right.
the steps in detail to be taken by the COC and the RP. Like it does not spell that, as soon as this decision of liquidation happens, some step of section 230 invitation should be taken. For example, an EOI, etc., should be, allowed to be published. So all those things should get, embedded as a part of the regulation. That is very much required. So that is something which is missing, the process which the RP and the COC needs to take.
So of course, a normal scheme and a scheme under liquidation would differ in terms of mechanics and modus operandi to a certain extent, at least. But so regarding that point three, to my recollection, there was an apex court ruling wherein the SC itself raised, the raised concerns or raised questions on feasibility of such schemes during liquidation. I am unable to recall that ruling, but I did write up on that, and I would rather just forward it to you for your consideration if you can see that.
शिवराज का ऑर्डर है, उसमें तो पूरा प्रिंसिपल्स लेट डाउन है, उसमें
सर
सारी
उसके
चीजें
बाद आई थी ये, प्रोबेबली एक साल नहीं हुआ है इस रूलिंग को. I'll just check सर.
2021 में अरुण कुमार जगतराम का गुजरात एनआरई कोक का भी केस हुआ, उसमें भी दिस वाज
I'll just
डिस्कस.
see and just share with you. एक बार आप प्लीज देखिए and then we can discuss.
So, sir, ma'am, so what is our final suggestion in this regard? Are we dividing
So,
30
to
days
my
into
mind, squeezing timelines for liquidator would rather not help ultimately, because in our experience, what has caused delays is, dragging litigations by it's mostly litigation which is playing its role in delaying the liquidation process, and non-cooperation of vested interests. So those are the two major things which are causing delays. And so any liquidator would want to complete the processes in the soonest possible manner. So merely reducing the statutory timelines may not really help. This is my view. But Sumit sir has said that this timeline seems to be okay, but yes, there needs to be detailing of the processes of Section 230 schemes when taken under liquidation. That's what Sumit sir is saying.
Why I say that it is a good step, because see, until unless the revival is on, you cannot start the sale of assets under Regulation 32, right? So when the liquidation process starts, then only the liquidator will first take the step of Section 230, and we see that invariably all the liquidators, wherever they feel that there is the slightest of the opportunity, they don't want to miss on the Section 230 invitation. So which often extends beyond 90 days. Okay, so let us consider a scenario when the COC and the RP feels that the resolution plan is not possible and the company is going to go into liquidation. At that very moment, when they are taking other steps of filing the liquidation application, etc., which will consume some time for the liquidation order to get passed, they invite the Section 230 revival application, right? So the process starts that day only. Okay, so we save a lot of time on that, right? And even if suppose if we feel that yes, there is potential interest, okay, and it spills beyond 30 days, even after the start of the liquidation process, maybe 5 days, 10 days, and if the revival is happening, then we have seen precedents wherein the adjudicating authority would grant that additional timeline, because it is only in the interest of the revival of the entity, right?
So again, here 2 points. Say suppose in case a liquidator is so here 2 points. Completion of process means what? That the NCLT has given orders for meetings, etc., and I have finally arrived at a proper scheme which is approved by NCLT. If that is the case, the time taken by NCLT.
It is totally open. We have not yet got any precedents.
Exactly. So that is 1 point, sir. Secondly, say suppose a liquidator is unable to complete this process within 30 days, and if he needs to go to NCLT again for extension, it means another period of 30 days. Like, so this is
90 days से हमारा कुछ time save हो रहा है. That is the whole objective, and it is beneficial to the process. But yes, what I want to say is that additionally, we can definitely write down here as our suggestion that please lay down the process which the RP and the COC needs to
process
follow.
And the timelines taken at NCLT for extension, etc., or say for the timelines taken by the judiciary should also be considered, to my mind, if at all.
Because they have said no, all the adjudicating authority, they clearly say regulation timelines are directory, not mandatory. So that IBBI cannot help it. I mean, it will continue like that.
One more observation to IBBI, Nitinji. Whatever the date, maybe that should be the working day. So the absolute date, some holidays, these we are not supposed to. The RP will work on Diwali and Holi and sacrifice all his social festivals and other things. They are also human beings, not the robot. Very, very pertinent suggestions to IBBI. Whatever the date they prescribe, please keep it the working date.
देखो अनिल, एक डिसिप्लिनरी ऑर्डर था, मैं नाम नहीं ले रहा हूँ प्रोफेशनल का, उसको आप पढ़ो. उसमें क्या है कि मिनट्स 48 आवर्स का जो टाइमलाइन है ना, सो द आरपी वाज not sending the 48 hours within the 48 hours.
Right.
And the plea which he took is that Saturday, Sunday, nobody works. So I think the regulator took a considerate view. Okay. So you can always refer to such orders.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will take out offline that order, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sumit sir, just wanted to clarify, should a discretion be left to the AA to exceed the time?
It is anyway with the AA to extend the time.
Okay.
Means what I was concerned about that if I go to NCLT for every extension, it again clogs the NCLT, it again delays the processes. That's what my concern is.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, Shikha, next.
So coming next to it, this isn't a substantive proposal, but yes, it says that when you are conducting auctions as a liquidator, you consider the valuation report as arrived at during CIRP, and in case you feel that a fresh valuation is required, you shall seek advice of SCC, and then you may use such valuations for subsequent auctions. The proposal says like this, but the regulations, the change in regulations are a little different. I just go to that.
Sumit sir and Shikha, maybe through leave, may I leave because having sir, we were meeting on the National Convention's preparatory meeting. So,
Fine.
Sure.
may I listen? Nitin ji, please carry on. And once again, thank you, Sumit sir. Thank you, Shikha. I'm really sorry to leave because having the meeting from 5:30 for the National Convention.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I think in regulation 35, sub-regulation 1 is intact, but sub-regulation 2 says that where the liquidator is of the opinion that fresh valuation is required, he can then approach on the advice of consultation committee. So I don't think it's a major amendment, Sumit sir, major proposal which seeks to make any substantive changes.
No, there. See, I'll tell you the good thing which this change brings on the table is that, see, as liquidator, when we are taking stock of things, there may be certain assets which do not form part of the books of accounts. Say, for example, in one of the plant which I was handling, I came upon so many waste which was lying in the plant.
Scrap.
And that scrap is normally considered, but yes, waste, which did not have any value when the liquidation process started. But then subsequently we found that there were people who were willing to give value to that. Now, that was not part of the valuation report,
Right.
number one.
Right.
So what we did, we hired a surveyor and we did our thing. And we also went to the court that whether we should go for a second valuation during the liquidation process. Mind you, in the liquidation process, I got a valuation done. Then I wanted another valuer to be appointed to go for this scrap. And since a considerable timeline was also passed in the liquidation process, I again wanted to value the assets because last time in the liquidation when it was valued was 4 years back.
Exactly.
Okay? So we filed an application before NCLT, right? Stakeholders allowed. NCLT said that no, nothing doing. There's no provision in the law which allows you to go for a second round of valuation during the liquidation process, right? So they rejected my application. So this matter was again flagged by me before IBBI. I said that no, if the stake, I know that and the reason given by the adjudicating authority was that who will bear the cost? It is a costly process and it will again take some more time. So now, in essentially what IBBI through this discussion paper is doing, that yes, whenever there is a need of valuation during the process, if the SCC is agreeable, okay, and SCC means people who will be getting the claims, getting the dividend, if they are agreeable, you can go for another round of valuation, even if you have done once already done the valuation during the liquidation process, right?
But sir, I'm unable to see what change are they proposing because it's already there, right? So in the liquidation regulations, it's already there.
No, liquidation regulation. Can you just show that in the screen?
Yes, this is it. This is 35 valuation of assets intended to be sold. Where the valuation has been, these are the provisions as of now.
And what is the change?
So can I speak? I think I'm Puja Bahry. I just
Hi,
want to
Puja.
Hi,
introduce
Puja.
you. How are you? How are you?
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Amendment, I think earlier in liquidation was in fact liquidation for valuation has changed many times. So now what it says right now is either you use the valuations which were done during CIRP period, or you appoint a liquidator within 7 days of the liquidation commencement date. So what happens is usually practically you come across various information which as a liquidator you get to know assets which are much after maybe 7 days after the liquidation commencement date. So there is no provision in the law to appoint valuers after 7 days in
After
the
7
liquidation
days, right.
process. So yes, if either you use the valuations which were done during CIRP, or you appoint during the first 7 days, and mostly
Correct.
you get to know about the changes in your liquidation estate, or what could be added or in fact totally
After 1 year.
subtracted much after long, especially with reference to when there are debtors. I'm handling a case wherein when the case started, the valuers gave a good amount to the value of the debtors in the company, and as on date all of those until the actual liquidation started, and maybe let's say 6 months after liquidation. So now all the debtors have written that we are disputed, we don't have to pay any amount, and all your books of account are not correct. So as on date, if in that particular case I do not have the option to change the liquidation value, so every time I file a report before the adjudicating authority, it will say that why there is so much of a reduced recovery, or that you could not recover despite having a large liquidation value, which was based on the CIRP valuation. So this is, I think, what they are trying to amend right now, that maybe a liquidator can appoint even after 7 days.
So
That
that means more flexible. The provision is now more flexible. The limitation of 7 days has been removed. So that in that manner, it's a welcome move.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. It is a welcome. We just need a clarity that would it be applicable, to certain liquidations also, which were already ongoing. I mean, can it be applicable? Some maybe clarity with the reference to this, the same can be given, where the assets have not been sold because of this, lower valuation or the higher valuation, as it may be at that point of time. So whether they can be changed, and there is a possibility of an upward increase also. I do know of someone's case where there were no assets, but then which were disputed. The liquidator got to know, but as on date, the liquidator doesn't have the option to appoint new valuers and to amend the liquidation value which provide to the adjudicating authority. So that's something it's a welcome move from that point of view.
Totally agree. So coming next, proposal 8 is, it is more of a reporting requirement. It says that the copy of progress reports along with the minutes of SEC, which was earlier only to be submitted to AA, is now to be submitted with the board. Though there are provisions under section 208 which require the proceedings to be submitted with the board, and there has been clarifications from IBBI which say that the proceedings include progress reports, etc. But probably there was some gap in understanding of the said circular or provisions. So I think this is to fill that gap, and IBBI is wanting a copy of those documents from the IPs. And probably there is so there is a proposal for standardization of the format of progress report also. This is also fine. I don't see any substantive change here.
One thing, sir, one thing I observed from this is that in the reasoning they have mentioned IPA also. So this should be submitted to the IPA also, but when they came up with the proposal, it only says IBBI.
Okay, with the board and the IPAs, yes, because at present it is to the board and IPAs as well.
But anyways, I think any liquidator which files any report, they have to anyways give a monthly report to IBBI and to IPA. And I mean, we've always followed that practice of making sure that every month, whatever is filed, especially this quarterly report, has to be given to IBBI.
So
and
that's what the concern
yes.
probably is, because they're saying, however, several liquidators do not submit copies of such records of proceeding files. Probably there have been practical instances, and that's
Maybe.
why they are trying to
Yes.
fill the gap.
Yes. Right.
So I don't think there is a much change in that. It's merely writing what was there.
I think it adds the minutes of SCC also.
So
Yes.
minutes of SCC.
The progress report format does not provide for enclosure of SCC
But
minutes.
so usually
Yes, sir.
liquidators do
Usually,
include.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually
usually, no, there is a list of, in fact, there is a provision that every time you hold a SCC meeting, you're supposed to file a report with the adjudicating authority. So usually when the quarterly report goes, usually the liquidator, of course, includes the notice and the minutes of the SCC meeting.
Report of the consultation of stakeholders. That's how it's
Yes,
worded.
that is something, yes, which was already there. It was already there since beginning, but I think maybe they just wanted to give a clarity with reference to the same.
Right. Going ahead, yes, proposal 9 puts some event-based timelines. So there are two types of timelines here, as I can see. One is they have put some minimum timelines, to allow the bidders to act. For example, for submission of EMD, for submission of documents. And there is other set of timelines which are applicable to the liquidator, as in, for example, the liquidator will have only 1 to 3 days to declare whether the bidder is a qualified bidder or not. These timelines can be extended again in consultation with the SEC, which can then provide additional timelines on the facts and circumstances of the case. This is the major thing. And 29 says is, maybe you should put it. 29 looks like more clarificatory, where it says that in the second auction notices, you can give options of manner of selling the assets. That's how it looks like. So minimum stipulation of timelines, to my mind, still is good. But the only thing which I'm concerned about is declaration of qualified bidder by liquidator within 1 to 3 days, because the liquidator might be required to assess eligibility under 29A, which might be complicated in certain cases. So for that, if I need to go to SEC again, there would be timeline considerations, etc. Also, the how SEC will play a role here without causing any delay in the process can also be considered, in my view.
So these are minimum timeline. Normally, the process document, we can word it that that timelines and decisions taken by the liquidator, they are flexible. So depending upon the need, the timelines can always be revised. But yes, the minimum timeline has to be adhered to.
And then the liquidator should get enough flexibility at the beginning only from the SEC that. But this what about this 1 to 3 days of timeline for declaration of qualified bidder by the liquidator?
वो तो आप 29 when you have completed, then only you can
Exactly.
declare. So
but there is one thing I did not understand, which was about submission of earnest money deposit, because EMD is something which is submitted when a bidder gives their their documents, their bid form. So EMD has to be attached along with it. So what is this minimum 2 days? That's something I could not.
Means that you need to provide them, because sometimes the process says that once I tell you that you are a qualified bidder and I declare the timelines for submission of EMD, then you submit the EMD, because their money gets stuck for a long time till the time you're doing that process. Probably that's the reason.
This is just to bring more transparency.
Right.
I
shouldn't tell the bidders that I am conducting the auction tomorrow, you submit the EMD today. I cannot do that. Correct. This is just to ensure some kind of a fairness in timelines. So okay for me. I was just only concerned about this declaration of qualified bidder by liquidator. So should I proceed ahead? Proposal.
The subsequent auction notice, Shikha, has to be within 45
days. But sir, there's a disconnect in the language, as I could see. So here it says that the successive auction notice shall be issued within the next 15 days of a failed auction. But when I see the regulations, it says and shall conduct next auction in case of failure of auction within 15 days of the last failed auction. this looks like a disconnect to me, because conducting an auction would mean that I have to issue fresh invitations, I have to invite bidders, I have to assess their eligibilities, etc., etc. And it might not be possible to conduct next auction within the next 15 days. Although, yes, this is a possibility that I can issue a successive auction notice. Again,
It
here,
should,
unless the
it should be issuance of successive or
exactly.
subsequent.
So I think the regulations, the draft of the regulations might require change in line with the proposal.
तो शिखा इसको आप modify करके ये भी भेज देना.
Right.
Puja, do you have any view on this? I think it should be
Yes.
issuance of notice.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with
Right.
you. Within from the issuance of notice.
This one is also one proposal where IBBI is looking forward to designate exclusive auction portals, barring which you won't be allowed to list your assets for sale. You will only be allowed to use only these auction portals. But my concern is, will we be reducing the accessibility to the assets by doing this? By limiting the number of auction portals, or will it be fine?
I agree with you, madam, in this particular scenario. I mean, I remember I was recently trying to put some assets on sale, and I did contact the the auction portals which were there. I think only two where they're actually
Right.
paneled. And they said, and the cost of the same was at least 4 times than what I'm actually paying to the auction portal which I am utilizing.
Exactly.
And they said that, and they primarily actually told me that, madam, we are extremely expensive portal, and we only want bigger assets to come, on our portal, and that is what we cater to. So they said, I mean, they themselves said that, it would not serve your purpose, because, my assets were very small, for a small company,
Right.
medium company.
Right.
So that was an issue. So right now there is no compulsion actually to use them. But the cost would somewhere will have to be maybe will need to be seen, because when we are trying to reduce the cost of an entire the liquidation or the entire CIRP process, so somewhere they'll have to become competitive also. Yes,
Right.
then we need to see that, and because there are certain times when again and again the auction fails. So sometimes it happens, I mean, when there are smaller assets, you'll actually end up paying more for the publication or the auction than actually what the value of the asset. And this is exactly what is happening in some cases. So I would advise that, when there are smaller, for maybe a smaller company, we should be allowed to use at least auction, or maybe make these portals a little
Affordable.
low cost,
So,
affordable
right.
affordable for everyone.
Right.
That needs to be seen.
So my view is, we shouldn't make these portals exclusive, because these would give them some kind of a duopoly or exclusive rights, which shouldn't be the case. I would be limiting accessibility to assets. Secondly, the cost from these designated auction portals should also be regulated. They should be put under some kind of a supervisory ambit as to what kind of cost they can charge.
I agree with you. I mean, right now for an e-auction, we pay, I think I pay 3,500 rupees
Right.
per asset. They told me directly 15,000 rupees per asset. So I said, any reduction? They said, no, madam, not possible. So I had no other option. I mean, we of course do try, so yes, this should not, I do not agree with this regulation from my
Sumit sir, any views on that?
See, second part, I agree. The cost part is definitely, it should be regulated. And see, the first part is basically IBBI has received a lot of complaints over leakage of information, and which has basically, compromised on the confidentiality and the transparency of the entire process. So an auction process means a process which is, wherein, no buyer or no person who is participating in the auction would come to know of any details
Of the other
prior to anyone else, right? But there has been a lot of cases and a lot of complaints which has been flagged to IBBI, and which is basically compromising on the process. So that is why they are not willing to permit. And we have seen so many other people who have floated the auction platform. I know of 10 people who are wanting to come up with their own auction platform. And when they have all the data, which can be definitely maneuvered. So that is where IBBI is hinting. And they do not want to allow every Tom, Dick and Harry to come into the process without having vetted complete security control and confidentiality process. So on that part, basically, I think the regulation is okay, but yes, definitely cost has to be regulated. It cannot
And
be
either we broad base the number of auction platforms that we are designating.
that we are
Yes.
inviting. That the regulator has been sounding very clearly. In fact, they also want to come up with their own auction platform, and they are
Exactly.
inviting. So all those smaller companies, let them comply with the norms and let them get impaneled. IBBI, I'm sure, is not stopping them to get impaneled. But yes, the norms should be complied with, because otherwise then the entire process will go for a toss.
Sir, just to add in terms of reasoning, as we will have more number of PDAs who will be in panel with IBPI, I think the cost factor is going to be taken care of.
So you're saying as and when it becomes competitive, the cost will go down.
आज के दिन 15,000 पर asset कोई नहीं देगा.
Exactly.
This would be very, very prohibitive.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Going further. So proposal 12 is that the information which was used in information memorandum during CIRP, including the valuations, etc., shall be used for preparation of asset memorandum, and the same may be submitted to A. So the idea is to squeeze the timelines here also and utilize the information which is already there. Just that will the time lapse, does the time lapse matter here or not? That's the only question. Whether a change, because the time information memorandum was prepared and the time the liquidation commences, there might be a significant gap. We have seen that. So saying shall, as in I should mandatorily use that information, will that be okay, or should I give flexibility to the liquidator that he'll be free to refer to details in the asset memorandum if he feels that the information is useful for the purpose of AM? That's the question here. And the second thing is the proposal also seeks to allow the liquidator to share the asset memorandum, which was not earlier the case, with SEC after getting confidentiality declarations from them, which is perfectly fine to my mind. Just that the first thing, whether I should mandatorily require the liquidator to use the information in IM for the preparation of AM.
No, if it is required, I will use. I think most
Exactly.
IM largely contains information when the company is being sold as a going concern.
Right.
But when we are selling it on an asset-wise basis, then probably only few information which is relevant may be taken. Say, for example, the useful life of the asset and all those things may be provided to the concerned bidder. But not every information would come in handy. If it
Yes,
is
and it also says probably with suitable modifications.
Right.
Within 30 days from the liquidation commencement date, the liquidator shall prepare an AM based on the IM prepared under Section 29 with suitable modifications. In any way, sub-regulation 2 also states the contents of AM. So that anyway the liquidator will have to give, just that he can use the information of the IM with suitable modifications in the AM. So that
Correct.
looks fine.
Yeah,
Right.
so that looks fine. But there's one thing where we're talking about sharing the asset memorandum with the SEC. If I remember correctly, one of the parts of the asset memorandum is what does the liquidator feel would be the realizable value of an asset, and if he feels it will be different from the liquidation value. So it is. I agree with you. It should. Some maybe parts of the entire. There was some information I still remember was confidential in nature. So that is the reason they said that. In fact, it is mentioned. It was always mentioned in the code that the liquidator shall not share the asset memorandum with anyone during the entire process except with the approval of the adjudicating authority. I remember there is this line somewhere in the code.
This change has been proposed. Yes.
Yes. yes, right. I understand. But maybe there could be certain information, which maybe you could just share only with the adjudicating authority, because there are, I don't know, the confidentiality agreement.
So it is
Whether
completely
is there
circumstantial. I understand what Puja ma'am is trying to say. But there might be certain circumstances where I might not have that confidence on each and every COC SCC member, especially
because there are members. Yes, there are many members, which I mean, it's not only where where there are financial creditors or only COC members.
Right.
There are other members. Yeah, there are other operational creditors. There are other. The directors are there, and sometimes where you yourself are saying that, you have to write how much do you feel will be, recoverable from an asset. So if you're already sharing it beforehand, there could be conflict or the data could be misused. That's just my little apprehension, which I sometimes,
possible
wherein
if you
I
see from that perspective.
Possibility. So I think maybe somewhere or the other, the liquidator should have the option whether he wants to maybe share it or not, something like that.
But
I mean, I don't
that
know.
will land,
We
if you
can
give
just
options to
talk about-
liquidator, the liquidator will get landed in trouble.
Yes. I agree with you. Anyways, yes, everything is. I think it's this, but these amendments are a step forward. That is their 100%. These amendments which they are thinking of is definitely a step forward in the right direction.
See, I agree with Puja and Shikha both, because it is not doing anything good to the SCC. Sharing of asset memorandum to SCC, how it is beneficial to the process is the question which we should ask ourselves. I don't think that it is leading to any benefit.
Right.
And
Right.
less said the better. There are leakage of information happens from the.
Yes. I agree with you, Mr. Binani. Less said the better.
That's the concern Puja was.
Yes.
It's not benefiting the process, and hence, I think on one-on-one basis also this question was being asked. I had given my view that it should not be shared because it is not doing, it is not benefiting the process. So since it is not benefiting the process, I am not for this proposition.
I agree with you, Mr. Binani, because even if you don't share it, there is nothing which is not going to change. Absolutely. It is, yes, it is what it is. And if you're discussing it with the adjudicating authority, I think that is the maximum which ought to be done. The rest is, of course, the views can be, I think, given from both sides, that is.
So, Nitin sir, there are reservations on this sharing of asset memorandum with the SCC of the members here, as these might lead to breach of important information which would otherwise only go to AA, as AA is my guardian. I can share with AA, but not with everyone. So
yes, and sometimes it's a possibility you feel that an asset may not be sold at a certain price, but it actually does get sold. Right. So if it gives a preconceived idea that maybe this asset will not be sold for, let's say 90% of the value, but it actually maybe sells higher than the reserve price. So why to give that preconceived notion to the SCC members also, truthfully. But the rest is of course the decision of the others also. I mean, this was my view. Please.
Right. So, sir, I'm moving ahead quickly. Yeah. Proposal 13.
I'll just request you to. Okay, what is our final conclusion on proposal?
So 12? The final conclusion in the first part is, Nitin sir, that it's okay if we use the information in IM and use it for AM with suitable modifications. That's perfectly fine. But the second proposal to let the liquidator share the asset memorandum with the SEC might not be preferable because number one, it is not benefiting the stakeholders as a whole, number one. Number two, it might lead to breach of such confidential information, which I would only want to share with my adjudicating authority and no one else, given the varied composition of SEC.
And number three, it will also open up litigation because the asset memorandum says that this is the expected price. And the poor RP liquidator, if he, after trying everything, if he's able to at a lower price, one of the committee of interest would come up and say, "Nahi, aapne to itna bola tha,
Yes. So there would be litigation against the liquidator, unnecessary liquidation, which is litigation which is not required as such.
Exactly. So proposal 13 talks about that the liquidation cost, which comes at super priority under section 53, it shall include the interest on interim finance till the same is repaid. As of now, there was a limitation in the period, which is for a period of 12 months or for the period of from the liquidation commencement date till repayment of interim finance, whichever is lower. So that bar, whichever is lower, has been removed. There is no maximum cap of 12 months. And now the entire period for which the interim finance is with the corporate debtor, the entire interest will have super priority. So I think this is a welcome move. This will attract financiers to.
No, very much required. It was very much required.
Yes, yeah, it is a welcome move.
Nitin sir, this is perfectly okay with the members here.
Okay,
this is proposal 14, deals with treatment of avoidance applications. So in case of resolutions, we already know that the resolution plan has to provide for treatment of avoidance proceeds from avoidance proceedings. Now this has also come upon the SEC to decide the manner in which the proceedings will continue, and secondly, the proceeds in which the proceeds from such proceedings should be dealt with. And this decision shall be a part of the final report filed before AE. Now I have seen a disconnect here in the proposal versus the regulations. The proposals are putting the onus on the SEC to decide the manner, but the regulations probably spell a different language. Yes, 44A says the liquidator shall provide for the manner in which the proceedings in the avoidance transactions. So this is how it's worded here. I feel the role of SEC should be clearly brought out here.
Yeah, I think that maybe it would be liquidated in consultation with the SEC, I guess.
So SEC sometimes might tend to raise their hands and just tell the liquidator that do what you want to do. But that will not solve the problem to my mind. I think there has to be a specific, because
इसमें SEC ये नहीं बोलेगा do what you want because उनको मिलेगा benefit.
लेकिन सर SEC decide भी नहीं करते हैं कई बार.
नहीं, if there are proceeds, they will be the beneficiary, so they will always raise their hand.
Right. So sir, then we should rather say there has to be also prescriptions as to the continuity of the liquidator during that time, plus the remuneration of the liquidator during all this time.
Yeah, of course. So all those things will have to be written.
Right.
Very much important.
If we wait for the slab, and if we apply the slab to these proceedings, it is not going to give anything to the liquidator.
No, but the manner, see, they have kept it open now for the manner in which proceedings have to be dealt with. So that will include that who will basically present themselves before the court, whether the committee or the liquidator, and if the liquidator does, what will be his remuneration till he does. All those things have to be done.
So should this be clarified as in the SEC will not be bound by the slabs and all? Because there is a general, it might cause confusion as in the liquidator shall be entitled to the same fee as under regulation 4.2. One might think of it that way. Because ultimately proceeds from avoidance proceeds also constitute realization from liquidation state. So
correct. But see, here the liquidation process is over because they have allowed them to file a dissolution application and the company may get dissolved. So then at that point of time, strictly speaking, the table may not be applicable because the company has already been liquidated. So at that point of time, they have kept it open between the liquidator and the SEC to take a decision on all the issues which may arise when this application is being heard. So the liquidator will say that, no, I don't want to be a party to it.
Exactly. That should be subject to consent of the liquidator also. It should not be forced to.
Right.
Yes, that I totally agree with you, because this is one case where like everyone knows of my matter. It's been 4 years that I've literally been running from pillar to post, and especially it was because of the avoidance transactions, and wherein the order was passed, and then somewhere or the other it should also come that yes, any pending investigation should not bar dissolution, because what has happened in my matter in G-Spat, I think everyone knows that in where the investigations by the MCA were pending, and the court has given an order that a pending any pending investigation would would create a bar on the dissolution. So they said that yes, this is there. It is notwithstanding. It is mentioned that it is notwithstanding any avoidance transactions which is pending. But they said that we feel that dissolution cannot be allowed. So it is a fact that it's been now, I think right now I'm filing my 17th progress report with the adjudicating authority, only because of the pending investigations which are happening. And they are also, therein the court has said that it, again, they said the same thing. It is a possibility that recovery may come. And because recovery may come and that will need to be distributed. So we think that the liquidation should continue. So the liquidation is continuing since 2018. Now I'm in 2022. So law says it has to finish in that point of time. It was 2 years, now 1 year. But unfortunately, the jurisprudence somewhere or the other says that no, if your avoidance is pending, dissolution cannot be allowed. So that needs to be clearly mentioned over here. And as a liquidator, I'm getting nothing for the past 2.5, 3 years, nothing at all, spending from
and you are married to the process itself.
I am married to, and in this case, I think I'm going to be married for the next 5 years, because even MCA is also not responding to my request for early expedition, conclusion of the proceedings. So, and that's going on. So somewhere or the other, a specific a provision should be there that yes, the liquidator is eligible for a fees during that particular period of time. Right. What would be that fees? Who will pay that fees? Because once you've done the distributions, see, from my end, I did my distribution in March 2020, and there was no money left in the accounts. So now, since March 2020, there is, there is no one to pay. So even tomorrow, if I ask all the stakeholders to pay, because they are not there, as such anymore, no one is ready to contribute. So somewhere or the other, the expenses which are incurred by the liquidator, what he will be, eligible for.
The entire mechanics have to be laid out in the regulations itself.
They need to be done on a very serious note, because this is one of the most, I think, if any amendment is made, it is going to be made now. So it is not going to be made again. So this amendment, so this is a very important time wherein we need to ensure that, and there are many cases where avoidances are going to be pending for a long period of time.
Plus, at this point of time, Puja, it's also important to check the applicability of these kind of provisions, because if these kind of provisions are not applied to ongoing cases, it will do sheer injustice to those cases. It's important to clarify that applicability.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. So somewhere or the other, more details needs to be mentioned. Who is going to get the? Of course, that is very clear. That if there is any proceeds from avoidance, they will be distributed as per Section 53. But the code says that yes, dissolution can happen. But the courts are not allowing, the adjudicating authority are not allowing when there are pending avoidance transactions. So this needs to be settled. This matter needs to be settled.
इसको शिखा ऐसे कर लो, SCC shall decide the matter, decide the manner, including
so and so,
including not list नहीं करना है, list करने से तो वो specific
including but not limited to, ऐसा करके we can say.
और इसमें what Puja is saying that it only talks about avoidance transaction. I think Puja made a very valid point that what happens of the investigation. If there are certain
even if say suppose ऐसी भी possibilities होंगी ना sir, if I have filed complaints to IBBI and the IBBI has initiated special court prosecution proceedings.
Madam, special court का तो हमारा as a liquidator we finish once we made a complaint. They then finalize. Okay, but the reality is, I have cases where CBI investigation is going on. ED investigation is about to start after 4 years. It is about to start. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs investigation is going on. So it is not only avoidance, it is other investigations. And as a liquidator, what the court has said, what the court has written is that, if the company dissolves, and they have given a very, very valid point. The court has given that if the company dissolves, then who is going to represent a dissolved, a non-existent company before the investigation authority. So we need the liquidator to continue. So that's exactly what the court has given in their order. So they are saying it will become, if we dissolve, the company will become non-existent, and who is going to pursue the matter?
That's a valid point. In fact, that's also a valid
who is going to provide that information further on, and who is going to distribute the proceeds if there are any proceeds from this investigation? So that's a very, very, I think, Madam, I will share the GSPAT order, and it's a very, when it talks about avoidance, exactly what needs to be answered is written in the paragraphs, in 2 or 3 paragraphs of that. So I think you can, yes,
I will please do share that with me.
I will share it to you, because these are the questions which the court themselves have raised, and they have written that is why we are not going to dissolve. But that seemed very good on paper, but that order was in 2020. We are in 2022, and I mean, it's been 2018, it's been 4 years. More than 4 years, the liquidation can't. And every month and every day, because the company is not dissolved, there is a new notice, one from the income tax department, one from some GST
labor
department,
matters, labor codes, and income taxes.
They are continuing because the company, because they know that the company is not dissolved. It is still in liquidation. So when a company is still in liquidation, I as a liquidator have to answer every second day a new letter from somebody. So it is not easy to continue, and it is only because of that pending investigation that the company has not been dissolved. So that needs to be in detail somewhere mentioned. When these amendments are happening today, I mean, this is just the right time to, close all these issues. That's what I feel.
Sumit, sir, any views on that, or should I?
Absolutely. This should be in addition to the avoidance transaction.
Okay. And the last one is regarding claims. So here it says that the liquidators should also consider the claims collated during the CIRP in respect of claimants who have not submitted claims during liquidation. So it has been a practical experience that down the line 4 years have elapsed and we are still receiving claims in liquidation. Not necessarily those claims were earlier filed in CIRP. They might not have been filed at that point of time also. But here what it says is that while collating your claims during liquidation, you should also consider the claims collated during CIRP. To my mind, this would lead to overburdening on the liquidator. Maximum what we could think of is to mandate the liquidator to consider the claims admitted during CIRP. For example, there was a creditor whose claims were admitted during CIRP. However, the creditor did not came up during liquidation and filed a fresh claim. So as a liquidator, I should consider that claim as mine also during liquidation also. But to say that I should consider all the claims collected during CIRP might be burdening the liquidator.
Agreed. Language admitted नहीं है क्या regulation में?
नहीं sir, admitted तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. It's simply collated. Even regulations maybe it says collated. I'll tell you which one.
And now the CIRP is going to, I think they're amending that everything which is in the balance sheet also you're supposed to yourself send letters to.
That might be a horrific situation.
That will become even more unbearable, because you do not know, because most of the claims in the balance sheets, let me be very frank, are not true. Are not correct.
And in fact, as my study of various international regulations and laws say, these processes are driven by proofs of debt. There is nothing called that I rely on the books. I rely on the proofs of debt which the creditors file. So this has been the rule.
Yes.
It is Regulation 12.2.
Which one, Marsha?
Regulation 12, Sub-Regulation 2.
Okay,
it's provided in page number 11.
Yes. Provided the liquidator shall consider any claim collated during the CIRP but not submitted during the liquidation process. So Nitin sir, this is also one point.
Sure,
claim admitted.
Yeah, any claim collated shouldn't be there, because that means that I'm putting double pressure on the liquidator to again go and verify all the CIRP claims. It should only be claim admitted during the CIRP, which is again available from the IM. And when the liquidator is seeing the IM for the purpose of AM, he can always see that such claim was admitted during CIRP, but has not come to me. So I think this was the last proposal in this discussion paper. Rest are the amendments.
When you are giving a suggestion, no, probably you can pick up the language for workman claim. In the liquidation process, even the workman, an employee, if they have not submitted their claim has to be considered.
That is an exception, sir, and that is well made, because
Right.
they might not be in a situation to file claims again
No,
and
you
again.
can pick up the language which they
okay. I'll circulate, sir, all the edits and my inputs here. I'll circulate to the team, so that if in case there are further inputs from your side, you can give, and then Nitin sir can collate.
Correct.
And ma'am, I'll be very grateful if I can have the final collated version.
Right.
I'll give that.
Please, sir. Please, ma'am.
So I think the last day for submission of inputs is tomorrow, I think, no? 5th.
Yes, ma'am, tomorrow.
Okay, I'll try my best, Nitin sir, to give it ASAP. So any other point which we need to discuss? Achha, just one problem which I came across. So schedule 1 allows the liquidator to drop terms of sale, etc. Now there have been few instances where adjudicating authority is also questioning the right of the liquidator to include the terms of forfeiture of EMD or other deposit monies. So I was just wondering if we need to detail out these things also in schedule 1, because laws like SARFAESI etc. explicitly provide for forfeiture, but not IBC. But in our view, terms of sale would anyway include terms of forfeiture and other things as well. So once accepted by the bidder, should hold good as a contract between the liquidator, the corporate debtor, and the bidder. But I think there has been some confusion in the minds of AAs across, and was just wondering if this can be included as a recommendation. I want to have the views of senior members.
I think yes, this could be the.
Yes, I also agree. I totally agree.
Okay. ठीक है. So my team will drop the inputs fatafat, and will circulate that to Nitin sir and Sumit sir and Puja ma'am and others.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
So thank you, Shikha. Puja can run us through the IBBI discussion paper.
Right. Okay. See, I don't know what views have been shared earlier, but my views are truthfully a little different when we're talking about the IPEs, because like I said, I'm an individual insolvency professional, and I do feel somewhere or the other what is happening is lot of the banks and the financial creditors and all the other creditors are going to have a feeling that only now work should be assigned only to IPEs. So somewhere or the other, I have got various calls across from a lot of individual IPs that it's somewhere or the other feels that it's going to be the death knell of an individual IP who is not a part of any IPE, and it is a possibility that individual IPs can get pushed to a corner. This is a view which I have been told by many insolvency professionals who have contacted me separately. So somewhere or the other, I feel there should be a minimum limit up till which individual IPs should be preferred to be given assignments. So my views are something which I have placed before IBBI's chairman, and also been various discussions earlier also. So somewhere or the other, I feel for bigger cases, yes, if there is an IPE, it is extremely good because it is there for coordination. The manpower is there for, let's say. So I mean, I would like to propose, if about let's say till about 500 crore cases, any cases above 500 crores should be given, IPEs should be given preference for the same, wherein they can be allowed to act as IPs. But I genuinely feel for smaller cases, medium-sized cases, because there are thousands of insolvency professionals who do not, get work, and maybe after this particular amendment, there will be huge issue. There will be huge issue. In them getting the work. So it is my advice. It is my view that yes, for somewhere or the other, it should be mentioned for smaller or medium-sized cases. Individual insolvency professionals should be preferred. Because they also need to, not to be pushed to a corner that they have to become a part of an IPE. This is something which I shared with the chairman also, and not all IPs have the capability to form their either own IPE, but then yes, individual insolvency professionals have done very, very good work in the last 5 years. There have been cases where individual IPs have handled cases beautifully, wherein the resolutions have happened, and somewhere or the other, cost is something which needs to be seen. Let me be very frank. There are cases wherein and an individual IP would, where everyone says that you should reduce the cost, the CIRP cost should be kept to a minimum. In that cases, when there are, primarily, IPEs are going to be preferred, the reality is that yes, the cost is going to increase. That is a fact. So it is my view, and I have, as an individual, as insolvency professional, and believe me, once I've made these views, I've told to quite a few people. A lot of them have called me, and I have mentioned this to IBBI also, that some kind of maybe a minimum threshold, if can be given, wherein individual IPs would be preferred, or maybe beyond that threshold, IPEs only would be preferred. So somewhere or the other, if something can come about,
or maybe
that
maximum number of assignments to IPs may be capped.
yes, that I agree with you. No, but then what will happen is they will say we have, X more number of partners and more number of cases. So the reality is, what about an individual insolvency professional who has actually, left his practice, whatever he was doing, and has given 5 years to this profession and done good work in the last 5 years? So somewhere or the other, I get a call from a lot of individual IP saying that, is this the end of the road for us? So, somewhere or the other, maybe I remember the chairman of IBBI saying that, no, this was never our intention. We just wanted that, IPEs can also be there, but then for smaller cases, and he was like that, for smaller cases, IPEs would not be interested, but that's not the truth. The reality is, when we are actually going for, maybe taking work from making presentations to, for creditors, they would then prefer only an IPE. This is what it is perceived, that only work would only be given to IPEs. So yes, a lot of individual IPs would join IPEs, but not everyone wants to do that. So somewhere or the other, and where you want to keep your own individuality, you want to ensure that you are only answerable for your ethics, your own values, your how you have handled a case. So somewhere or the other, individual IPs have also done very good work. So, but it should not be the end of the road for them. That is my view. So for smaller cases, this is something a lot of people had approached me for this, that, for smaller cases, it should be seen that if a threshold can be made where individual IPs are allowed, are given the preference. So that would be something which would be good. That was my view. Yeah, minimum limit. It could be based on the turnover or, of the corporate debtor. So in which, where, only for those bigger cases, only IPEs can be IPs. For smaller cases, let there be, the option available for individual IPs also. That's what I feel.
Fine. So this can be noted by Nitin.
Sure, sir. Sir, I've noted it, but just wanted to know, it is only going to be an option that IPEs are going to be there. And in case individual IPs are performing better, and there's always a freedom of contract between the parties, so should we not let that mechanism play out itself, or
See,
should we?
see, that is in theory, and we
Yes,
understand.
that is a theory, sir. Yes.
But what will happen is that when you allow the entity to become insolvency professional, the creditors will preferably look at entities only.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
that is a reality, sir. No, that is a reality. So somewhere or the other, we need to see. I mean, we are like, I think, old IPs. We are, I mean, those who we always have the option to join any IPE, but not all individual insolvency professionals have that option. So herein we are, I mean, I'm trying to put forward this view for a lot of people who have contacted me, of a lot of views which I've been listening to this industry, and we've been there since day one. So we do realize there is a lot of anguish among the individual IPs. So that is it really the end of the road for us? So somewhere or the other, I that is my individual view. I mean, I don't know, you can put this forward, but this was my view. And this is something I've already spoken about 2-3 times in various forums.
No, it's perfectly all right. I think Nitin, ये view आप जरूर feedback आप दे दीजिए. This is the view from various quarters of the insolvency professional that we are receiving.
Sure, sir.
Although the board says that they have conducted a lot of discussion, and after taking public comments, they have basically proposed this regulation. That is what the discussion paper says. But nevertheless, this should be brought to the notice of the board, so that otherwise the creditors will definitely prefer the IPE, and
Yes, sir.
would
And
not
sir,
look
I was
at
a part of the initial discussions also, wherein with IBBI when this was for, and that point of time, I remember they were saying that yes, we will have a minimum threshold, below which individual IPs would be preferred. Or a threshold over which only IPEs will become an IP, maybe let's say 500 crores. So, it is their understanding also, that IBBI is understanding also that for smaller cases, IPEs should not be the IPs. They were saying that they themselves won't be interested, but that is not the case. That is not the case. That's what I feel. So that's my view, sir. That's my view, sir.
I'm just
So,
one. Sorry, sir.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
please
just
go.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
So just one question, sir. Any limit that we fix? For example, ma'am said 500 crores. So will that again? Are there chances that will be put to constitutional challenge or some kind of legal challenge? Because wherever we say that this amount beyond this IPs and below this, the individual IPs will be preferred. So just thinking about that, can that be put to any legal challenge in the courts? Because ultimately we need to have some intelligible differentia.
So maybe
They're
you
making
can
it-
say MSMEs, for MSMEs, which are medium and small enterprises. For that
Okay,
is
ma'am.
that is something which is workable for
Okay,
and for MSMEs, and individual IP may be preferred, and for which is not an MSME, in that case then an IPE would be preferred as an IP. So somewhere or the other, that's what I was thinking. I mean, when you just said the limit, so I think MSME is a good criteria.
Sure, ma'am. Okay, noted.
And even if after all the consideration, if the board or the larger interest is still, having to continue with the current proposition, then one other option would be that for individual insolvency and insolvency of other entities other than the corporate ones, uh, the entity, it should be the individual IP who should be permitted. That also can be a suggestion.
Okay, sir.
In only if the board still continues to feel that no, whatever is being proposed, they will go ahead with that. Because see, otherwise there is an ecosystem which has been created, and the fact also remains that many people have left the other practice and are only focusing on this area because it requires a lot of commitment.
Yes,
So,
and even after giving commitment for 5 years, and then when you feel that you are at a position wherein you may not get work, and personal insolvencies, sir, truthfully, it is hardly any amount is being given by the creditors in any personal insolvency matters, which is a reality. So that is a very sad fact which is happening. The creditors are pushing the insolvency professionals, truthfully, to reduce their costs so much that it is becoming impossible for any individual IP also to actually work right now. That is a sad situation, unfortunately.
Acha, there is one more thing which I would like to suggest apart from this point is that it is not clear that if only the existing IPs would be allowed to enroll as IP, because somewhere the regulations talked about existing IP.
Yes, IPEs, yes, sir.
Yeah, so it should also be, so say for example, if new IP are formed,
Yes, sir.
and suppose this regulation comes in, okay,
Yes, sir.
and I form a new IP, then would I be also eligible to enroll myself as an IP? Is a question which this regulation does not answer, because it only pertains to the existing IPs. That is an additional thought which I had in my mind, which can be flagged before the vote. And then at what stage the name of the partner or director would be signing? Fine. And this significance of disclosure of capital contribution to the adjudicating authority or committee of creditors perhaps is not understandable. I have to disclose this regulation. In regulation 7HA has been included, which says that the insolvency professional entity needs to disclose to the applicant, the adjudicating authority, and the committee the extent of capital employed. I'm not able to understand the
Capital
significance.
employed, or as in what kind
Capital.
of partnership structure or capital has been contributed by partners? Basic ownership thing are they wanting to know?
Not very clear, so not able to comment much, but why this is required, I don't know. Yeah, these are the two additional points. First one was that it is not very clear if only the existing IPs would be allowed to enroll as IP. What about future IPs, IPEs, which get formed, whether they would be permitted to enroll themselves as IP or not? So I think this was it from our side. I think there are participants also, we can ask them for their views.
Also, Nitin sir, please let me have your email ID. I might be having it, but just on a safe side.
Should we call out particular names of the attendees, or how do we go about?
I think there are 14, 15 attendees. If anyone has any views to offer, kindly tell us so that the same can be collated and Nitin sir can take that forward. We can include in our inputs as well. So Nitin sir, I don't think there are any views, further views on that.
Sure, ma'am.
And Nitin sir, you please let me have your email ID. Might be having it, but not sure.
We have his mail ID. Shikha.
Okay, Barsha, then sure, then fine.
So Nitin, we are not circulating anything on the IP discussion paper that you have noted down, right?
Yes, sir.
And the liquidation process, Shikha will circulate to us, and then we will forward it to you.
Please, sir.
Sure.
Please, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Sumit sir, thank you very much. Shikha ma'am, thank you very much. Puja ma'am, thank you very much. To
Thank
all
you
the
so
other
much.
participants, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank
So
you,
all-
Nitin
to
ji.
all-
Thank you so much, sir. Puja ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
To
you,
the
sir.
other
Thank you
participants
for
also,
being
thank you very much for taking out time for this session. Thank you.
Thank you.